Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. God has hidden unlimited treasures in His Word. Every time we open it, we can discover a new treasure, or admire an old one. What will we find today? Let's dig in. Here's Carla Early with Treasure Hunt in the Word.
After I'd been doing this podcast for a while, I wrote a letter to my speech class teacher from seminary. She probably wouldn't remember me, but I thought she might want to know that there is hope, even for the shyest of students. God can still use them. I will always be in awe that God could use an immature, fearful kid who cried the first time she had to do a speech, who was scared to walk across campus in college, and who cowered every time the phone rang. And He used me to start a podcast of encouragement. Wow, it still amazes me. I'm sure many people in the Bible felt the same way. One of the most encouraging stories to me as God began to transform my life was Moses. He'd already tried and failed to be a leader of the people of Israel. And 40 years later, he's in the backside of nowhere with a totally different life as a shepherd when God shows up and calls him to lead his people out of Egypt. I love his reaction because it's my knee-jerk reaction too. I can't. God, you've got the wrong person. Choose someone else who's better equipped. And I've heard God's response before too. You can't, but I can. Now get going. And look how God used Moses. He definitely wasn't what the people expected. But God worked mightily through him, extracting his people from the hands of the strongest power on earth at the time and making them into a nation. In Judges, God used a guy who was hiding from the enemy by beating out his wheat in a winepress. The angel of the Lord greeted him with, "The Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor," when Gideon was anything but that. However, a mighty man of valor was what the Lord made him become. And with 300 men, some trumpets, and some jars, God used Gideon to rescue his people once again. And talk about unlikely, a shepherd boy with a sling and a rock. God used David not only to kill the giant and protect his people, but to unite the nation and establish a kingdom that will last forever as David's descendant, the Messiah, reigns. God used a harlot in Jericho, a poor friendless widow, a bald farmer, a slave girl, a foreign king's cupbearer, a Jewish orphan, all to further his plans for his people. In the New Testament, Jesus did the same thing. He used unlikely people to show his glory and spread the gospel. God used a poor carpenter and a teenage girl for Jesus' parents. And just think of who Jesus was himself. He was the most unlikely Messiah. Definitely not what the Jewish leaders expected. A poor carpenter from Nazareth? Nothing good comes from Nazareth. And just think of those that Jesus chose as his disciples. Fishermen from Galilee, a tax collector of all people, and a zealot. The scribes and Pharisees were constantly disapproving of Jesus' choice of friends and associates. Harlots, lepers, tax collectors, and sinners. What was he thinking? And what was he thinking when he chose me? And when he chose you? By saving weak, frail, broken people like you and me, he shows his power, and he gets all the glory. Paul explained this in 2 Corinthians 4:7. He said, "But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us." And Paul said in 2 Corinthians 12:9 and 10, he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly for my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, I am content with weaknesses, for when I am weak, then I am strong." The Lord shows his strength through our weaknesses. He makes himself obvious as he uses unlikely people, all for his glory. For example, if he had chosen someone who already was bold, confident, technically minded, and eloquent to start this podcast, they could boast of what a big favor they did for God. But in choosing someone who is scared of public speaking, intimidated by technical gadgets, and timid in so many ways, he could get all the glory for whatever happened. Are you one of those unlikely people God has used? How has God used your weakness to show His strength? How is His glory shining brightly through you? I'd love to hear your story.
You can contact us at treasurehuntintheword@gmail.com. Also, if you'd like to share a treasure God has given you by doing an episode, please contact us. You can listen to other episodes on our website, which you'll find in the description below. Thanks for listening, and remember, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.